Hi guys, just your ordinary European guy reporting from Europe on what's happening in the world and what's happening in Iran and in the United States. Well, as you may have noticed, I'm pretty tucked in into my fleece here because we're cutting down on our gas consumption. Yeah, luckily we're entering spring, so that's not going to be a good a big drama. Thank you, Mr. Trump, for taking that into consideration. You could have started your war somewhere in November. That would have been much more dramatic. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, anyway, what we're going to talk about today is how is what is happening now in the United States, and that will be a recurring theme in my videos as a European. How is this at all possible? So just to put anything straight for those who have perhaps a clouded view on this. America in 2024 elected for its president a known convict, a convict, and not a convict of 20 years or even 10 years. No, somebody who was recently convicted and also educated as a rapist. Now, in Europe, I think approximately it's more. I think 60 or 70% of EU countries or European countries have in their laws that you cannot run for office if you're a convict, and it's not that because countries do realize this can impinge on civil rights of people. Even convicts are entitled to civil rights and to better their ways. So most of them say, well, any conviction that was before in the last 4 years, if you were convicted in the last 4 years, in the last 8 or 10 years, you cannot run for office, but then it expires before. But that doesn't seem to exist in the United States, and I get it. It's this idea of, well, then the law can be used, or the DOJ can be weaponized. Well, that's kind of ironic. To sabotage a political candidate. I get that, but then again, I also get that the United States, the judiciary procedure of coming to a conviction, so to turning somebody into a felon, a convict, is much harsher than it is in Europe. For instance, in most European countries, the initiation of the prosecution, so that the DOJ initiates a investigation against a citizen, it's just a decision of a judge, a prosecution judge, it's called under the Napoleonic Code, which governs continental Europe. But in the United States, that's subject to the decision of a jury. So before a prosecutor, a district attorney or attorney general can start a case, he or she needs the approval of a jury. And then you got the indictment or the investigation, then the indictment, and then the trial. And then again, you have a jury. So it's almost impossible to politically motivate a conviction against a political candidate. You need to convince two juries, which are chosen from the people, which the defending party, the defendant, can reject for being partisan. So it's double secured. So no, that doesn't fly. So again, why is it possible that the United States, a government system which arguably has in all of the West has the head of government that it's the most powerful, has the most authority of all the democracies, Western democracies or democracies in the world. Shall I say liberal democracies? Because that's another matter. Perhaps come back to that later. How come that there are no better filters on who is elected? If you elect such a powerful person, and with powerful I mean once a US president is elected, the next chance really to hold him or her to account is the semis. Sorry, not the semis, the midterm elections. That's 2 years, and Trump is showing what damage you can do to if you're a loose cannon or a malignant president somehow gets elected, as I think is the case here. What damage he can do in 2 years' time before he can really, and if he has a complicit Congress, which is the case. So the Republicans hold the majority, who refuse for some reasons that are not clear to Europeans, and we suspect it has to do with purely personal, economic, financial reasons. That's what we suspect. There can be no other reasons to keep him in office, not to impeach him. I'm talking about the Republicans in Congress. So there's 2 years' time that he can go unchecked, as he does now, and that's unimaginable in Europe. In Europe, you well, I'm making abstraction of the United Kingdom, which of course has a system that is similar to that of the United States, or the United States copied the system of the UK, of their colonial master. But in continental Europe, you've got a system of proportional representation, not majority representation. What does that mean? That is that you've got your, well, they're both representative democracies, the United States and European countries. So representative democracy is that you don't have direct decisions on laws by the people, because that would be referendums. That's direct democracy. In representative democracy, you elect per quota of people a representative who represents you in a parliament. And then, okay. So that's where the difference is. How are these people elected? In Europe, the people elected in a parliamentary body represent, well, mathematically, they cannot always represent because there are rounding up, rounding down errors, but they represent all the factions within society. Literally anyone can start a party. Well, not literally anyone. There are certain thresholds. Otherwise, literally anyone could start a party, and that would be logistically impossible to manage. And so, and that's in each European country. And I think it's the same in the United States. You have thresholds, like you have to gather, say, 50,000 signatures before you can start a political party. But then if you've got your 50,000 signatures in Europe, you've got a chance to land somebody in Congress, in Parliament. That does, you have no chance at all in the United States because of the majority system, the first past the post system, where in case of the House of Representatives, there's one representative, or there's a number of representatives allotted to a state, proportional to the number of residents, which is pretty much how the European Union, the voting in the European Union works. The European Parliament is constituted, but each state has the right to organize itself how it assigns those allotted representatives. Also, just like in the European Union. But in America, there are a lot of states that say, well, we just look how we got these districts per representative, a district, and we just look at how many who won the most representatives, and whoever won which party won the most representatives in our state, and the one who won the most, you would say, a European would say, well, okay, there are 12 districts that voted for Republicans, and then there were 5 districts that voted for Democrats. So you got 17 representatives for your state. So 5 go to the Democrats and 12 to the Republicans. No, the 17 go to the Republicans, and that's why you have this weird phenomenon that the president in the United States can be elected president without having the popular vote, with having a minority, with the opponent having gathered more votes across the United States and still win. And that's inconceivable. That's inconceivable in Europe. Okay, but why do we start on this issue? Because we have a rogue cannon now, a loose cannon. Trump. He's just, well, I'm not going to repeat what a lot of YouTubers have already stated, but it all comes down to psychology. So he's a damaged person, originally a wealthy person coming from a wealthy family, and damaged. So he became a narcissist, a sadist. Also the complete dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellism, and psychopathy. I'm not sure about the Machiavellism, because that requires a certain level of intelligence, which I doubt we can attribute to Mr. Trump, or shall we call him the convict, as you please. So he's a psychopath, and he's been given the power of the most powerful institutional head of government in the world, which also has the most powerful military in the world. So those two combined have been given to a psychopath, a psycho. And that's why we are in trouble today. This, in Europe, with its proportional democracies, suppose you've got presidential elections in France, direct presidential elections. Of all the European countries, France perhaps best approaches the system in the United States, or perhaps it's the reverse. Perhaps the United States copied from France. Now, don't forget, France helped found the United States. But suppose a Trump-like figure was elected in France, and the next day he starts dissolving institutions. He starts firing people. He starts recruiting politicized civil servants, of which loyalty is more important than competence. I don't think that's even possible. Okay, I don't think that's even possible under French law. That wouldn't even be possible. Let's suppose that would be possible. Well, if he did that the next day, he would have a vote of non-confidence. Because even if that president is elected directly by the people, Parliament, which is elected by a separate election, has the right to express its non-confidence in the government. So I don't think it can touch the president, but it could say, well, all your secretaries, all your ministers are fired. Go and find somebody else. Find yourself a new government. That's what the parliament in France can do. So it means Hexeth, Miller, uh, Besant, all the guys, well, Miller is not, so all heads of the departments would be fired. The cabinet would be fired. And Trump would have to find new people, not the same. So that's how it works in Europe. He wouldn't have a chance. But that's the most, the strongest form of presidential form in Europe. If you go to countries like Holland or Germany, or then it's worse. Then the president is elected from the parliament. There are no direct presidential elections. So there are elections for Congress, if you want to take the equivalent of the United States. But then Congress appoints the president. That's how it works in Europe. And if that president starts fooling around, starts violating the Constitution, the next day he would be voted out with a simple majority, not 2/3 or impeachment and then go to the Senate. No, with simple 50% plus one. That's how it works in all of Europe. So you can have a laugh at that as Americans. That's it's wishy-washy Europeans, and the president is not powerful and can't make decisions. Well, maybe so, but we are protected against tyranny because of that. So I think that's a bit the dichotomy between Europe and the States, and perhaps that's why Americans, or Americans that look kind of inwards, don't understand Europe, and why Europeans don't understand Americans. But I'll be forgiven for thinking that the Europeans have a much longer tradition in politics than the Americans. Well, any form of government, any name of your institutions, they're all European. They're all based on European political systems, all your institutions. So you have to face it. You're a copy of Europe. And we, the originals, say, well, what you're now trying to do is where we were in the 19th century. Not even late 19th century, or the start of 19th century, before the Napoleonic Wars. That's what you somehow try to reconstruct in the United States. And we go like, man, did we fight all these wars for that? And the Americans come to fight and die in Europe for this. And that leads us to another. Hold on. That leads us to another topic, and I'm gonna perhaps put on a light here. Because it's getting dark outside. Is that better? And no, to what extent it's overlit. I'm doing this without any auto cue, or just I'm just doing this on the top of my head. Well, perhaps it's the first and the last video I do. I don't know if I said anything that's on my chest. No matter who I am. A truly important thing in all of this, and that goes for any democracy. That is, that a democracy cannot survive as a democracy, or should I say a liberal democracy, and I'll explain that what's the difference between a democracy and a liberal democracy. Spoiler, it has nothing to do with the American definition of liberal. A democracy can only survive if the voters have a certain level of education. If they are not prone to populist ideas, if they, that ties in with the level of exposure to the media and the control, who controls the media, because we have this system of quote unquote news stations, news channels on cable TV, like Fox News and Max News Max and what have you. They call themselves news, and well, why do I say they call themselves news? But that goes to a lesser extent for mainstream American news chains like CNN or NBC. Their main purpose is, being faithful American companies, is to make profit. And they do it unashamedly, but it works because Americans are used to it. So I'll give you an idea. A European who watches American cable news is shocked by the fact that in between, in the news, there's suddenly a commercial. That's not done. It doesn't exist. Even with private cable news companies in Europe, they do have commercials at the start of the news and at the end of the news, but not in between. So, and that's, if you putting commercials in your news, you better make sure that your news is interesting. Not necessarily news, but whatever you say keeps the people that are watching you glued to the TV, keeps them interested. And at a certain point, it doesn't really matter anymore what you say. You still call it news, but the important thing has become to get eyeball time. And that's unheard of in Europe. Yet, hopefully, it will. We'll never get there. I don't know. Perhaps. I mean, I'm judging from my country in the center of Europe. But hopefully, I don't think we're there yet, and hopefully, we will never get there. And that, of course, makes you, as a viewer, see news as entertainment, and you expect them to say the things you like to hear. Even if it's framed as news, you expect, but then you think it's news also. And that's what's happened in the United States, and it's only possible because of a lack of education, basic education, political education. The basic things like how your country is organized, the separation between powers, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative powers, the co-equal branches of government, the bedrock of government, the bedrock of liberal democracy. That word again. Well, these are taught in schools in all over Europe, because people know that's how you get informed voters, and voters that can be critical and cannot suddenly hear populists say, well, that judge is politically motivated and he was appointed by this and that. If you don't grasp the concept of independence of the judiciary, if you don't respect it, then of course tyranny is just around the corner. But that doesn't exist in the United States. There's no, certainly not now. The Department of Education has been abolished. The federal department has been abolished, so it's up to the states, and they will become Bible schools. What Bible schools in the United States? Like the madrasas in extremist Muslim countries. There's no difference. For Europeans, if we see what's going on in the States or in an extreme Muslim country, we don't see the difference. Europeans are by nature atheist. That's another thing, unless proven different otherwise. So we say, my God, doesn't the Constitution have a provision on the separation between state and church? No, not church, because that's only Christianity. Separation between the state and religion. Oh, it's not explicitly in there. I think it's the Fourth Amendment. Says, The government shall not intervene in religion, and vice versa. So there is a separation of religion and state. And Europeans go like, it's in your constitution. Why is Hexet saying prayers in public? His briefing, in his pressers, in his press briefings. Why is he mentioning God? He would be out in a jiffy in Europe. And rightly so. So we got Europeans have the impression that the states are regressing morally. I mean, they are undoing all the achievements of the Enlightenment that we fought so for the past 300 years since the start of the 17th century, 16th century. All the sacrifices that we made for science, for pushing religion back to where it belongs, in your house, in your private life. That's where religion belongs, not in the schools, not in science, and certainly not in politics, unless it's a political party that's been voted into that. But that's a political party in Congress. It's not the minister of a department, because that minister represents the whole country, not his fraction in Congress. Americans don't seem to grasp it, and certainly not a guy like Hexet. And well, Hexet, Trump, he's a con artist, so he's not religious. Of course, he's not religious, but he feels that he can use it to play his the MAGA crowd, and he does a wonderful job doing that. But that only goes so far, and till reality will come bite back his voters. Apparently, the only thing that really will convince them is the price of gas. No, it's not natural gas. It's not liquefied natural gas, LNG. No, it's gasoline, and it's gas. I wonder what Americans say if they mean gas. I mean to cook on. What do you say when you mean? Okay. So the price of gas, if that goes up to, God forbid, $2 per gallon, $2 is nothing. I mean, it was $4 per gallon in Europe before this stuff started. I mean, but anyway, that's what will wake them up. And then, of course, all the tariffs and. But anyway, so the most important takeaway of this is that you choose your president, and then it's just hoping he doesn't go mad on you. That's how the states work. And somehow, till now, in those 250 years, or in the modern history of the United States, let's say from the 1900 onwards, that has never happened. And we all felt, well, yeah, you only have the nice part. You got a strong president. And of course, it's nice to have a strong president. If you could compare it to an enlightened autocrat, someone who is a dictator but means well with his people and is also intelligent to mean well. Good example is Singapore. I hope I'll ever be allowed back in, but it's built on an autocracy, but an enlightened autocracy. Somebody was intelligent and well-meaning for his people, and then it's kind of wonderful. Get decisions made, check, like this. And that's how Europeans were a bit jealous of United States for the past, before Trump came along, because you had a strong president and you didn't have these governments that fell all the time and lost confidence of that parliament, and you had to snap elections. And so, yeah, Europeans were a bit jealous. But now that jealousy has gone, because we see the other side, the upside of having a weak president, or the downside of having a strong president. And I think that's all for now. And I need to think about this some more, but hope to see you for next installment, and we'll try to build further on what was said today. Catch you next time. Bye bye.